Hey, we're live. Patrick by David, the man who needs no introductions, is here. Coming off of one of the best videos I've seen recently about the recession, the stock market crash. The video is doing phenomenally. It's going viral. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I think I watched through the entire thing and I was fascinated. You talked about, the tree analogy, which was brilliant in my opinion. Um, well, we'll talk about it in a second. Huge fan. Happy to have you on. And we could not have picked a better day with everything that's going on right now. So, welcome aboard. The market seems to agree with you. At least it seems like you were right on the money. Although it's hard to say, it's just been a few days, but it seems that we're headed into a really bad place. But we'll talk about it in a second. So, first of all, I wanted to ask you just a general question. I was wondering before we start, like the interview, because you've done some of the best interviews in the business, and I watched them all. I watched the Kobe interview. I watched all the work you did with Michael Francis, which was brilliant. So I'm a huge fan of your interviews, and even back in the day before I even had a channel. And now you're in the opposite seat. So does it make you feel uncomfortable to be the guy who's being interviewed? I mean, do you feel more as the comfortable to be the interviewer or the guy answering the questions?
I'm comfortable both ways. I'm comfortable both ways. The on this side, when I'm the one interviewing, I'm learning more. So I'm always more enjoying when I'm learning. But if you're interviewing me, I'm fascinated when I walk away talking about a subject that maybe we haven't talked about before in an angle that's new. So that's the part that makes it unique.
Well, yeah, you that's the one thing I'll always notice. You always feel extremely comfortable in your own skin. And that's something I've learned to appreciate in life because it's not an easy trait to find these days. But I want to ask you, Pat. I mean, I've seen the video, but I don't know how many people in the chat have seen it. But I'll ask you, even though I know your answer, like where are we headed as an economy, as a country, as stock market in general, currency, energy? I mean, what the fuck is going on?
I mean, listen, bad policies have consequences, period. And we're paying a price for it. And at the
Yep.
same time, just like kids, we liked it when our parents or somebody had low standards with us and we got things easier. It
Yep.
felt good short term, but we paid a price for it long term. We were just in Bahamas and I was talking to one of the parents that was with us in Bahamas with their son. And I kept looking at their 12-year-old son, and the guy was on his phone. No matter where we went, he was on his phone. And I kept asking, saying, how much time do you give this guy to play on the iPhone? And they said, we can only watch the iPhone 1 hour a day. I said, 1 hour a day? I swear to God, I've seen him 7 hours a day, 8 hours a day. And I said, how many times do you watch the phone? And then there was an element where maybe the parents even got uncomfortable. It's like, who cares how many hours you watch? So no, it's not, I don't care how many hours. It's not my kid. It's your kid. You can do as many hours as you want, but you have to know there is a price to be paid when you raise your kids based on low standards. Life is going to be very, very hard on these guys. So America, in the last year, gradually we've been doing this. Everything's become more low standards. Everything's become, oh, poor baby, oh, poor this, oh, poor that, oh, we can't make it out of this. And don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about the 1% that needs help. I'm talking
Yep.
about the bottom 49% that can do something about their lives, but they choose not to, whatever the number may be. Some folks that are in the middle that are always blaming, and they're so loud and so noisy that we start paying way too much attention when we create policies for them. We learned UBI didn't work. That's number one. We learned that if you want to do universal basic income, if you do it, and I had Andrew Yang on the podcast 6 weeks ago to talk about this. I said, we did a bunch
Yep.
of UBI the last 2 years. Guess what? The money flowed to billionaires. No matter how much money you give to people that don't know how to manage money, it goes back to millionaires. It goes back to billionaires. I made more money in the last 12 months than I made in my entire lifetime. And it's a 9-figure check. I'm not talking about like little money. It was a very good year for me, but I don't support the policies, even though they were good for me. So we are now finally in the stages where we're going to pay this price. Some people are going to pay it who thought it was good to go. And the only concern I have is, are they going to let us go through the actual recovery, or will they go back to using quantitative easing to delay the headache for another decade? So all I'm curious about is how they're going to handle the economy going into shambles in the next 3, 6, 12 months. Based on mathematics and how history works, we're officially will be in recession first or second week of July. Whether they announce it or not till after midterms, that's a different story. But economists will tell you July 1st, it's officially a recession. Okay. Maybe we'll hear about it Q1 of 2023, but how they use this crisis is all I'm curious about next.
Yeah. It's like with transitory. We knew this was transitory like 8 months before the motherfucker admitted it. But like, there's like we can just look at 2 negative quarters of GDP, which is exactly what we're going to get in about 2 weeks, and we're going to know we're in a recession literally on, as you mentioned, end of Q2. But they're not going to admit it until they're done with the political stuff. I have no doubt about it. The problem is that people believe that. You know how many people, when I was shouting and screaming, "This is not transitory, boys. This is not. There's no way. This is just. There's literally 0%. This is. You can't print so much money and have it be transitory." It's like, no, it's inventories, and now everybody's coming around. But I mean, I feel like I wanted to ask you a question. Like in your video, you talked about the Elon Musk quote, which I absolutely loved, and I don't think people understood how deep that motherfucker went with this quote, because when he was talking about fools getting too much free money, he was not talking about this crisis. He was talking about what happened in 2008 when they bailed every motherfucker under the sun except for 2, just to hang 2 people up, and then everybody else got bailed out. So we've been living through this culture of bailing these idiots out and preventing from the forest regenerating, as you mentioned in your example. I think what Elon was saying in the example, let this burn. We need this to happen. And do you fear that the government is going to try to cover it up for political reasons and let nature take its course?
Oh, there's no question about it. They're going to get ahead of it. They're not going to let the market do what it does, because then they're not going to get funded on their next reelection. They need that money. They need that support. The PAC needs to get that money. The right thing to do, I don't think they're going to be doing, because, for example, I had a friend of mine who had an addiction with Vicodin, and he got arrested one day, and he had been struggling with Vicodin for 6 months, and he went to jail, and his parents called me, and they said, "What do you think we should do?" I said, "Leave him there." So, what are you talking about? I said, "Leave him in jail for a few weeks," because even though I took him to Tarzana Rehabilitation Center and it was $400 a day, they had one rule. He has to tell us that he wants to go through rehab. If he says he doesn't want to, we have to let him out, because this is not a jail. So even though it was 14 days of $400 a day, if he said I have to leave, they have to open the door and say you have to leave. And when you're going through rehab off of Vicodin, it's just as difficult, some say, or as difficult as heroin. It's not easy. Doctors will say it's tougher to go through Vicodin. And I saw this guy. He couldn't take care of himself. 3 days straight, he got into a car accident. He would call me. I got into another car accident. He would hit people because he's on it so often. So parents call me and say, what do you think we should do? And I said, man, let him stay. You want him to stay? Listen, I know you don't want to hear this, but you got to let him stay. Well, he gets bailed out a day later. And not bad, the parents, the girlfriend or somebody came and paid the money, and he got bailed out. You know what happened 2 weeks later? Found on his bed dead. Okay? With the pills and the Bible on his stomach. One of the most tragic days of my life. Till today, I remember the phone call, what car I was in a black Lincoln Town car, headed to Diamond Bar when I got this call. Here's the point. When we go through it, it's not going to be pretty, but it's going to last about 6 to 12 months. And then the market's going to decide. This got bought up by pennies on a dollar on what it's worth, but it was bought by these guys. Oh, those guys who were sitting on cash, nobody knew about it. They're not on margin. They just bought up 3 companies. Damn, good for them. You're kidding me. This one went out of business. Yup. Those 9,000 employees went to 7 different companies. Okay, what's this guy doing? Well, that guy had all those Bitcoins on margin. Listen, if you go on margin the way you did, yes, you're trying to make 5 billion and you're really going for the whole thing. Great, but you're on margin and you got a margin call. Sorry, your 5 billion became 50 million or 100 million. there's a movie, Margin Call, if you've not seen it, from
Yep.
15, 20 years ago. It's a very, I've been on margin. I've gotten a margin call. Let me tell you, it's very, very scary when you get a margin call. So, but in that moment when we're in that season, I'm just curious to know how people are going to handle that, because the AOCs of the world are going to be screaming every day, bailout, 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 bailout. But Bernie Sanders, bailout, bailout, bailout,
Yep.
bailout, bailout. And it's going to be a challenging times. Now, I'm not talking about let's leave it, because if you also just let it, like, don't do anything about it, crime's going to go high, which means safety is going to be not at the highest level. Then you're going to see riots and protesting at the higher level. But unfortunately, all of these things are a byproduct of bad policies that they came up with, that we as voters kept saying, yeah, it's a good idea. Yeah, it's a good idea. Yeah, it's a good idea. Oh my God. Why are we sitting here at this kind of a situation? College used to be $4,000 a year. Inflation, CPI, last 40 years up 225%. You saw that. College tuition is up 1,200%.
1,000. Yeah. 1,000%.
You mean to tell me college tuition is improved by 1,000%? You mean education today, a 4-year degree, is 1,000% better than what it was 40 years ago? The average salary still is $40-some thousand. It's only increased 120%. But we're saying let's forgive all these college loans. No, why don't we go to universities and tell them to lower the cost of a degree? Instead of it's costing $50,000 a year, go back to $10,000 a year. Why have all these nice fancy buildings? Why have all these nice fancy stuff? Invest more into good teachers, invest less into statues, and let the students and the parents save money. But no, they won't do that. So these are the conversations that are not being had, because how many of the lawmakers, the lawyers, the congressmen and the senators are willing to hold the universities accountable, the same universities that they went and got the degree to get a job to be a lawyer, to get a job to work for that big firm? They can't do that. So they have to defend the universities. But the rest of America is sitting there saying, wait a minute, just because you went to that degree and the certificate on the wall, you're trying to validate you made the right decision, that's hurting our pockets. That's hurting our kids. That's hurting my retirement. But no, so the benefit that we have today is the following. Tom, there's guys like you, there's guys like myself, many people out there right now that are starting to pose these questions. And here's what's becoming a very valuable currency today. This is the currency that's becoming very valuable today. It's not the dollar. It's not gold. It's not Bitcoin. It's not Ethereum. It's not collectible cards. It's not paintings. It's not NFTs. It's the ability to reason. The ability to reason, meaning Bill Maher doesn't like Trump. Bill Maher is not a Republican. He's a liberal. He's a registered Democrat who doesn't vote for Republicans. But he has the ability to reason, and he's calling out a bunch of bullshit, because currency of reason has a lot of value today. Rogan, reason. Russell Brand, reason. Jordan Peterson, reason. These are people that are sitting there saying, listen, I just have a hard time processing this, and I'm trying to reason with you, and they're talking to a bunch of people. So Americans are sitting there and saying, I'm not gonna lie to you, I've been a Democrat my entire life, but it just doesn't make any sense. You know what? I've been a Republican my entire life, but also this doesn't make any sense, because why are they so protective of Second Amendment, yet at the same time, I understand I'm a Second Amendment guy. I own M16s, I own guns, I own shotguns, I own all this stuff. Why are we not willing to have the conversation? So both sides have all these powerful lobbyists. At Paul Manafort on the podcast, and I'm telling them that lobbyists are ruining America, because their job is to convince you and I that what's good. But there's lobbyists on all sides. So we have to be able to sit there and reason and say, yeah, even though you're on my side, I know what you're doing. It's cool, but I want a little bit more argument. Anyways, the point is, the currency of reason is becoming very valuable today. And those who are able to reason are helping us make actual progress, not progressive progress, but actual progress.
You know what it reminds me? Like the shit that happens now, if this would have happened like 10 years ago, people would just go berserk. Like politicians allow themselves now just completely disattach from any sort of correlation to truth. You got Biden out there saying, well, GM is the leader in electric vehicles. and he's like not even blinking, and like it's a straight up lie. It's not even. There's not even like a reasonable framework where this could have been interpreted that other way. So he's straight up lying that black is white, white is black, and the whole political discussion has now become completely partisan. It's either your truth is determined by your political affiliation. It's not about facts anymore. And I think that people are starting to question that, saying, "Hey, what the fuck is going on? I mean, can you just tell us what the fuck is going on instead of what you want to be the truth or not?" Like I heard people saying, "Well, Biden's fault for the gas prices." Well, yeah, I don't think it's a very nuanced discussion. And by the way, shout out to the 1,300 people in the chat right now. Thank you for showing up. I think it's not really Biden's fault. I'm not a Biden fan. In fact, I think he's a doofus, and I've gotten a lot of flack for that. But I mean, it's not his fault. It's the U.S. government's, for their generations of basically kicking the oil industry in the nuts and basically disencouraging any sort of capex into oil industries, while going for this ESG bullshit scam. So there's a lot of reasons why oil prices up. We can talk about it later. But I mean, like if you're a Republican, so you're just shouting, "Oh, it's Biden's fault," and there's the Pavlovian reaction, "Yeah, he's an idiot." Just chill. Let's all like kind of have a discussion. And like I didn't. You can hear by my accent, I wasn't born in the U.S. Well, like as an immigrant, where I've never like gotten used to the fact that we don't have a discussion culture, like a debate culture in this country. It's basically just, it's like you either with me or I want to kill you. There's no middle ground, and that's the part where it just really triggers me. Like we just are unable to have a conversation about anything right now. It's like you mentioned the Second Amendment, right? I mean, anytime I hear people talking about it, it's very militant. It's either one side or that. Nobody says, "Okay, let's find a compromise where everybody kind of gets to do the thing." But I wanted to ask you a question, Pat. You mentioned earlier the college stuff. Do you feel that in 2022, the entire college system is a little bit of a scam? Because after what happened with Harvard, when the motherfuckers charge people like what 50, 60 grand for Zoom that you can basically watch for free, I feel like they got exposed. I mean, should we just? I mean, why are we talking about canceling student loans where we can just fucking cancel the system, right?
You know what I love about the market? Here's what I love about the market. I got 4 kids. Tom, I don't know if you got kids, but my kids.
3.
Okay, so
I showed 4, but I have 3.
Okay,
Maybe there's one more I don't know about. Who knows?
So I got 4 kids. As a parent, sometimes we're lazy. And here's what I mean by we're lazy, meaning, we don't want to explain or talk to our kids. We just tell them, get it done or else, right? Well, your kids eventually get to an age where you can't do that anymore because they now can debate and discourse and push back. And my son does that. And it ends up, sometimes I walk away, I'm like, damn, he made a good point. I got to kind of tell him he's right because I don't want him to think he's wrong. He was right in this situation. I'll tell him, hey, you know what? You're right. Here's what I need you to do. Pa, 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 pa. So he's now learning how to push back. And I, as a parent, I've only been a parent of 4 kids. With a 10-year-old, this is the first time I've ever been a 43-year-old father with a 10-year-old kid. I'm learning how it is to be a parent of an 11-year-old kid. I don't know yet. I'm growing just as much as this kid has grown, right? So, but here's what happens. Kids are going to expose my flaws of parenting, and they do it all the time, okay? We obviously do it more than they do because we're parents, we're wiser, but that doesn't mean we don't have flaws in our own arguments, and they poke holes in our way of parenting, right? Okay. So where am I going with this? Here's where I'm going with this. Let's take remote work. Let's take working remote. That's another big debate. Some are for it, some are against it, right? Howard Schultz is begging. He said, I'll get on my knees. Please come back to work, the CEO of a Starbucks, right? Goldman Sachs saying, you have to come to work. Elon Musk saying, no, you can act like you're working 40 hours from your home, but you're going to act like you're working 40 hours from the office. We're not doing remote work. And if you don't want to come home, guess what? Quit, leave. Now, whether he did that in a way to be able to fire and announce that he's firing because he did that a week, then the next week he says he's firing 10%, who knows? He's a strategic guy. He's capable of doing that. But watch what happened with remote. Do you think more liberals or conservatives support remote work? It's probably going to be liberals. So now watch how arguments work. And I mean the left. No, you should let people work from home. No problem. Let's do that. So the most expensive states to live in are ran by the left. Let me say that one more time. The most expensive states to live in are ran by the left. New York, California, Illinois. You can go on. I can give you a bunch of states. They're ran by the left, right? DC, all these places. Okay. So watch how at first they're all saying, working remote, working remote, working remote, working remote. That's the way we do it because we have to be progressive. No problem. This one's going to bite you in the butt. Why is that? Well, you work remote. I am going to go live in the state of Florida. You're out of New York. You're going to pay me my 145, but I'm going to save the 13% in taxes, 12% in taxes by living in New York. You're right. I also agree in living remote. So those liberal states lose those people and they go to red states to save taxes. So
that's how Austin got created. Austin is the whole story of what you just said.
So eventually, the market will poke holes in everybody's argument, whether it's remote, whether it's taxes, whether it's gas prices, whether it's inflation, whether it's cryptocurrency, whether it's gold, whether it's the market, whether it's equities, whether it's real estate, whether it's commercial real estate. No matter what you and I try to do, they're going to find those arguments, like even oil versus EV, right? Well, I mean, we need to get away from oil by 2035. My name is Gavin Newsom. We're going to go to 2035. It's going to go 30%, 35%. Okay, got it. Let's actually process that. So these electric vehicles, they're essentially computers. Okay. So if we're 100% EVs later on in one day, what if things happen? Like even this whole, when you're talking, I had a Dr. Pryon, who's the leading expert in nuclear weapons and, weapons of mass destruction, super EMPs. That's what he does. He's been doing that for his entire life. And I said, okay, what does a super EMP do? Well, you know what it does. I mean, if we had a pandemic last 2 years and it was tragic, look what it did. The world stopped. People are worried about a nuclear war. We're not even talking about a cyber warfare. A cyber warfare is eventually going to happen. Not telling you it's going to happen this year or 5 years or 10 years or 20 years or 40 years, but we're eventually going to have a cyber warfare. Nobody expected 2 years ago for us to have a pandemic where the world shuts down. America shut down. Airports shut down. We went from 2.5 million flights a day to 50,000 flights a day, according to TSA, 100,000 flights a day. That dropped from 2.5 million to that's 25 times fewer flights a day, right? Okay, oil versus EV. If all of a sudden something tragic happens and these electric vehicles don't work now because they ran based on electricity, millions of people are going to sit there and say, man, the good old days when we had oil, at least we can drive those cars with oil. You're going to see one day people are going to miss having cars running on oil. George Carlin did a skit years ago, and he said, you guys are so worried about the climate change and all this other stuff. He says, you realize this world has experienced, meteor attacks. It's experienced this. It's experienced that. You think you people are more powerful than the world, than the planet? Are you out of your mind? How arrogant of the people to think you're really making that big of an impact. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not sitting here saying, let's go smoke a bunch of cigarettes and put smoke and smog and all this. I'm not saying that. That's not what my messaging is. All I'm saying is, whatever argument everybody's arguing for, eventually the market and time is going to tell you were right or you were wrong. And we're being told right now, many of these policies that they came up with are wrong because America's economy is now paying a price for all those bad policies.
I think that this is the problem with living on the western side of the hemisphere, because I came from Russia is a really unstable. It has been unstable for a long time, so I don't take stability for granted. And obviously, Iran has been known to be a little bit unstable lately. If you go like pre-Shah, it's two different countries, but post-Shah, Revolutionary Guard, it's a complete mess like Russia. So I think we look at the world and we say, well, this is very fragile. This is very fluid. I wouldn't take this for granted. And I think what happened in Western Europe, especially Germany, was I think the worst case of them all, where they just said, well, you know what? Coal is dirty and the nuclear energy is so dangerous. Let's just buy gas from the Russians and just rely 100% on Russia. and let's just sit around the campfire and sing kumbaya, and everything will be glorious, and we'll all live in this utopian world where everything's gonna be fine. And the same thing happens with with the ESG bullshit movement in the US. We're giving up our energy independence, and basically everybody's looking at profit margins and, oh, look how much cleaner it is, how much more efficient, blah 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 blah. And I think that people now, because of what happened with Russia, Ukraine, the pandemic, everything is happening right now with OPEC, how people basically learning what OPEC really is, which is a cartel. People are figuring out, oh, wait, it's not about profit margins. We actually have to have strategic ability to make shit in our own country, have energy, and the environment is important, but it doesn't come before these things. First, we got to have shit to eat. With the baby formula thing that happened, this is like people like, I don't think people in the US realize how fast things can go down the drain. And like since the 90s, the US have been basically cutting away every single ability to make shit domestically, shipping everything out since the Clinton days. Well, it's cheaper. Let's just ship it out to India or China or whatever the fuck that is, right? And let's just make it there. It's cheaper. Now we're paying the price. So luckily for us, and this is where I think we're kind of lucky. We didn't go all ham in this like the Europeans, because the Europeans went like, well, into this thing, and we kind of slowly dipped in this. So we still, we have corn, we have food, we have energy, but the Europeans are about to get it hard this winter. They don't know what's coming. The food shortages, the energy shortages. I think you're right on the money about everything that you just mentioned. So is there a scenario, Pat, like you're an analytical guy and you don't predict shit, but you kind of look at it analytically? Is there a probable scenario where we get ahead of the oil price and the energy price crisis in the next 6 months to a year?
So the whole conversation they're having, hey, is there anything we can do about this? And this week Biden's like, there's nothing we can do about it. This is out of our control. This is out of our control. This is out of our control. And to the point where even MSNBC host is saying, look, you guys got to stop saying this, because this happened after you. And the White House advisor to Biden said, well, gas prices went up $1.70 since Putin started the war against Ukraine. Fine. Let's just say they did. But prior to that, how did it go from $1.80, to $3.30? How did that happen? You can't.
It went up 50% before the Russia invasion even happened.
So why did it go up 50%? Well, because the day Biden took office, it's like, no, the pipeline, this, that, we're not touching this. We're going a different route. Okay, cool. So policies, there was a scene in the presidential debates. I don't know if you remember when Trump's like, wait, Texas, pay attention to what he just said. This may be the most single important thing that just happened right now. Listen, Texas, listen. And he started mentioning all the states. Did you hear what he just said? Here's what he's going to be doing. Trump knew what he was talking about in that moment in regards to oil. And this wasn't about like, hey, oil are my voters and all this other stuff. No, that's a policy. You get a bad policy, we're paying a price for that policy. Can they figure out a way to bring it back? Yes, there are ways to do it. We've been energy independent. We were energy independent for the first time in a long time. We can get that back at a time like this. There's many other ways to bring it back. But will they do it during this time around? I don't know. Because, look, being in too deep, when you're in too deep and you try to solve big issues based on Band-Aids, you're still not going to address the bigger issue. Yep. For example, so this whole, this article that's been coming out by NPR this week saying, for the first 5 months of the year, we've already had 246 mass shootings. Okay. Tragic. Every day you turn on the news, it's a mass shooting. Uvalde, mass shooting. Buffalo, yep. Mass shooting. Another place. It's as if every day, that's all I'm seeing is a mass shooting. And younger generations like, oh my God, mass shooting, mass shooting, mass shooting. Okay. So now they're saying, we need to increase the age from 18 to 21. Cool. Let's just say we say yes. We need to, people that are on medication, mental health, medication, things like that, we need to not let them get the guns. Fine. Okay. Do an automatic background check on everybody and prescription. Fine. Say we do all of that. Let's just say we do all of that. How many of the 246 mass shootings could have been prevented? 5%? 10%? So even if you do all of that, it's still not going to prevent 220 of those mass shootings. Well, at least we're making progress. No, you don't understand. It's not about we're making progress. Did you see what happened to Russia this last week with 850 McDonald's shutting down? I'm sure you saw this, and they replaced it with a new restaurant, right?
Tasty.
That's it, something like that. Tasty, right? But
Sorry, Pat.
did you see what it looked like in the restaurant? I don't know if you've seen it. You watch the video and you're like, man, they are so happy. The place was packed. There was thousands of people going to these 850 locations that used to be McDonald's. What's the point? Here's my point. I don't know why, but Russia seems more united for their country. And by the way, I'm not sitting here, talking about who Putin is. He's got an 83% approval rating. I'd much rather live in America than Russia any day of the week. That's not where I'm going with it. But in America is not all Team America right now.
Well, he has the privilege that we don't have, which is he controls the narrative 100%.
Yeah, I mean, and he can fire. He can do a lot of different things. I mean, we saw what happened with some of those guys. You're talking about media, right? On the media side,
there's no more independent media in Russia. No, online, on social media, it's all gone.
But you look at US, okay, which we have the discourse going back and forth. You really want to fix this gun issue? Yeah, we do. Okay. Bill Maher does a special this week, and he says there's 4 reasons why we have issues with guns. Mental health. He talks about iPhone, the smartphone. Then he talks about movies and music being one of them, right? Okay. So are we willing to touch everything and talk about everything? How many movies do we need to watch where the hero is the person that gets vengeance and revenge? So we've gotten away from values and principles. To me, my biggest concern here is, and by the way, you're talking about oil. What are some old basic money principles? Save for a rainy day. That's not sexy today.
Yep.
Stretch the dollar. That's not sexy today. If you can't buy it on cash 2 times, don't buy it. That's not sexy today. We're no longer talking about, hey, US is number 1 in the world in most single family households, 23%. That's not a leader's bulletin we want to be number 1 in. So again, for me, everything we're talking about goes back to we're no longer selling certain values and principles. There is no values and principles today. We're not talking about how to raise kids. We're not talking about high standards, high expectation. What can you do for your country instead of what your country can. We're not talking about those principles. All we're talking about is, how about them, pour this, pour that. This is unfair. This is unfair. This is unfair. Listen, life is unfair. Period. Life is unfair. We got to figure out a way to change the values and principles, or else no matter what policies these guys are coming up with, everything to me is just a Band-Aid.
You feel like sometimes when I look at this political map, it seems to me that a little bit of the oil issues. I don't think I mentioned this before. It's 100% Biden's fault, but there's a lot of self-inflicted wounds. When I look at the geopolitics of how things are running today, and shout out to the 1,900 people in the chat right now that are with us right now, I look at the map and I say, well, when Trump was in power, so Trump got the importance of Saudis, and he was basically playing ball with Saudis, even though I would not define them as perfect partners. But he was basically saying, well, I need these motherfuckers, so I'm just going to play ball. And we had good relationship with Saudis, hence we get good relationship with OPEC, because Saudis pretty much run OPEC. They're like, for those of you who are not familiar with OPEC, they're like US to NATO, they're Saudis to the OPEC. They basically call the shots, them and the UAE. So but the Biden administration comes in, and here's where I say it's self-inflicted. This is their blame, their part in this. And they say, well, we're pushing on ESG, we're pushing on, basically, you saw the Chevron CEO came out a few days ago, said, I don't think we're ever going to build a refinery again in the US with everything that's going on. It's a 5-year investment. I mean, these guys are fucking crazy, right? So, and on top of it all, we're also going to annihilate the relationship with OPEC by going after the Saudis. We're not going to back them in Yemen. We're going to go after the assassination of Khashoggi. And basically, we're going to ruin the relationship. I mean, I'm just wondering, like, what were they thinking? I mean, there must have been like a thought process of an analysis of where this thing is headed. I mean, is is it that random? Was there not somebody in the room who said, "Hey, I don't think it's a good idea," ruining the relationship with OPEC? I mean, at this point, I feel like they're trapped, Pat, because I'm looking at it. What's the alternatives here? So Russia is the third biggest producer of oil. You can't trade with them, right? So you got, where could other reserves come from? U.S. needs 3 to 4 years to ramp up production, and that's assuming you can rebuild trust with the Chevrons and the ExxonMobils, and assuming that they can do it. So they can go to Venezuela, underinvested for years. It's going to take years. You can go to Iranians, but then you ruin the relationship with Saudis even more because they fucking hate each other. So they're in this. I feel like they boxed themselves into a corner a little bit right now with oil prices. And I feel like people don't understand how oil prices basically drive like 70% of inflation. And I that's why when I saw a video, I was like, you get it, because inflation cannot go down when oil prices stay elevated. And if inflation stays up, profit margins of every single business is going to go into the toilet. People lose their jobs, less spending, vicious cycle, the snowball effect. So what I wanted to ask you here is like, in your video, you kind of give the blueprint and you say, well, this is an opportunity in disguise. So I'd like to get a little bit of, I don't, obviously people should go and watch the video. I think it's almost at 1 million views, soon to be 1 million views. Do you mind like sharing your blueprint on how you're approaching this next couple of years where everything is going to go to shit? So people can actually learn from kind of your system of trying to make lemonade out of these lemons that are coming right now?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you the good news and the bad news. In the world of sales, if all of a sudden one of my sales guys starts killing it and he makes 100 grand a month, 3 months in a row, I was like, oh my God, what are you doing right now to make $100,000 a month? And this is just amazing. And then I'll sit there on a Zoom and I'll say, guys, it's not what he did this month or last month or the month prior to this on why he's making the kind of money he's making. It's what he did 2 years ago to prepare for this season. Okay. It takes a while to create momentum to be ready for the right season. There is people that have been waiting for this for a while, and they're mentally ready, they're emotionally ready, and they're financially ready. And they're going to capitalize off the next 2 years. And by the way, power to those people for staying disciplined and not getting the timing of when to be greedy right. Everybody in the world is greedy. So don't get it twisted. This isn't about who's greedy and who's not. Everybody watching this is greedy. Every investor is greedy. Every competitor is greedy. But some are greedy when everybody's greedy. Some are greedy when nobody's greedy. The next 2 years, those who sat around prepared for this and they made some right choices, things are going to be on sale left and right. Now, here's what I mean when I say things are going to be on sale left and right. I mean, you hear the stories about cards I bought, investments I made, stocks I bought, things I got in where all of a sudden I got overpaid. Many times in life, we see people that become extremely successful and we're thinking, well, that guy's probably worth $100 million. That guy's probably worth 50 million because he's worth the $50 million. He made the money. No, his strategies are worth the money that he made. Right now, it's all about strategy. So for some who are not prepared for this, well, you kind of are going to go through it, and it's going to be tough. Everything during this season about building your own reputation. First time around when 9/11 happened, and I had just gotten out of the military, I had no clue. I just got started with Morgan Stanley Dean Witter. I just got my Series 7. It's 9/10. The next day is 9/11, my second day at work. And everyone I look around, every stockbroker is afraid. And my broker said, if you can stick around, you're going to make money. That's when I made my first $100,000. And I said, well, I've never had $100,000 in savings. Awesome. Then when 2006 came and I saw what was going to happen with the mortgage crisis, no income, no assets, no income, no assets. Don't worry about it. How much money did you make? $68,000. Just put 250 on there. No one cares. It's no income, no assets, stated income. Seriously? Yeah, stated income. It's fine. All right, you got 4 payments. You can pay the 15-year, the 30-year payment, the interest only, or the negative amortization. Negative amortization is only $1,500 a month. Wow, that's what I'm going to pay. No, because the loan amount's getting bigger every month when you pay less. Yeah, well, it's a great program from Australia. What a great inventor. No, we saw what was coming. Michael Burry saw it. A bunch of people saw it. Well, 2008, then my savings goes to $1 million. Okay, then you add another zero and another zero and another. This is the season to add the zeros to your net worth. You're going to see $5 million guys become $50 million guys. You'll see $50 million guys become $500 million guys. You'll see $500 million guys become $5 billion guys. It's just that kind of, the ones that are prepared for it. But you're also going to see the hardcore margin people who are $200 million people become $18 million people. You're going to see some of that stuff happen, and there will be some horror stories, unfortunately. But regardless of what's going on, during crisis, what happens is it's the ultimate filtration system. Everyone's being filtered out. Everyone's being exposed. Everything's being revealed. Everybody who talked a big game, we're going to find out if their game is a real game or not. Everybody who was quiet and everybody judged them, and all of a sudden they're right, people are going to be like, whoa, I never thought he was going to be right, but damn, that guy's right. She's right. Wow, I for sure thought he was right, but he's wrong. This is what we're going to learn the next 6, 12, 24 months. And it's going to be weird times. It's going to be strange times. But for those that are prepared, they're going to call this the greatest 2-year run they ever made for their wealth creation. People 20, 30, 40 years from now are going to look back. They're going to say, so much wealth was created during the 2022, 2024 time. Here's why. I'll add this last part and I'll turn it over to you. Samba, what's going on? Okay, I'll turn it over to you is the following. So remember when they started printing money and all the gold people are like, gold's going to go to 5,000. Gold's going to go to 5,000. Gold's going to go to 5,000. Gold didn't go to 5,000. Oh, Bitcoin's going to go to $250,000. And by the way, these are smart people that said Bitcoin's going to go to $250,000. The more we printed, it went to 69. Bitcoin's at 25 right now, whatever the number is. Ethereum's down. So, hey, how come that didn't happen? So a lot of the typical knobs that you control that moves this or moves this historically, that has not taken place. So either history is wrong based on what draws what. It's kind of like saying, the more sugar I eat, the more weight I gain, the more fat, those knobs been out of whack. So either the knobs are out of whack or we're on so much fake drugs that our body is making it seem like those things don't have side effects. But the moment we get off the drugs, our body's going to explode. And these drugs that we've had the last 2 years is constant quantitative easing. The more money being sent, the more stimulus being sent. The next 2 years, if we don't go through those drugs, listen, we're really going to learn if these markers that we've used for the last 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 80 years to somehow see what's going to happen to the market, if that's accurate, or the last 2 years was just so fake, so messy that we're all been confused and it's going back to being able to read those markers. So next 2 years, Tom, for me, it's purely market research focus group type of a thing. I personally am just curious to know what's going to happen in the next 2 years.
So are you building now your cash positions, basically preparing for? So
I have been. So I've been waiting for this season. Don't get me wrong.
My partner, the guy I'm doing money talks with, just to know, he's independently wealthy, former Citadel, sold a few companies. He's like 70% cash, and he keeps on building and building. He's basically going full on towards a full cash position.
We're in a very similar position.
So is there a place to hide, Pat, like real estate, like, because to me it seems if the feet hit the shan, everything goes to shit. I mean, there's no real place to hide other than just stay in cash and just. I mean, how do you know? Like everybody has.
Not staying in cash. I'm not staying in cash.
So what are you doing?
Cash. I'm in cash, but I'm not staying in cash. Meaning.
So what's on your shopping list right now?
In the next 3, 6, 12 months, I'm doing dollar cost averaging. Every time things drop, I'm going in.
Mm-hmm.
Going 5 million here, 3 million here, 2 million here, 6 million here, 3 million here. But I'm not doing it sudden. I'm doing it slowly while I'm going in. I'm purely dollar cost averaging because there's no way you're going to be able to time when is the bottom. No one knows when is going to be the bottom. And the bottom may only last a month. The bottom may be only 3 months. So, but if you're not consistently going to dollar cost averaging, you're not going to capitalize off the bottom. So if you have $1 million, Don't all of a sudden go buy, because Bitcoin's, who knows if the Bitcoin's at the bottom right now. Some are saying it may crack $12,000. Some are saying it may crack $8,000. Some are saying $15,000. Okay, but 25,000 still not a bad buy. So maybe if you can only buy half a Bitcoin, buy half a Bitcoin, and it goes to 23, buy another half a Bitcoin. It goes to 21, buy another half a Bitcoin. It goes to 18, buy another half a Bitcoin. That's what I'm saying. But I am in a place where I'm going to be participating through dollar cost averaging.
There's a very interesting blog which I follow. I don't know if you heard about it. It doesn't have a big following. It's called Market Sentiment. They're on Substack. You should check it out. It's really good. I think they have like 15,000 followers, very, very small, but like on point. And these guys have researched all the crashes since 2000, 2008, even the 2020 mini crash. And they compared three strategies, Pat. Get this. One strategy is go cash, wait until the market gets better, jump back in. The other strategy, invest as usual. And third strategy is what you described, DCA into the weakness, assuming you pick the right companies. That's a big if, because that's the biggest variable in this. Like we'll talk about in a second. And basically, assuming you can pick the winners and you're not investing in the bozos, Inc., right? They've shown that the returns for the DCA strategy after 1 year is a positive 0.5%, while the guys who got out lost obviously the entire market, and the guys who stayed in lost a little bit less. 3 years in, they were leading. 5 years in, they were absolutely annihilating everybody else. And after basically today, 2022, up 225% since 2020. So the strategy of DCAing into good companies during a pullback is statistically unbeatable, but that's the kicker. Like, how do you find the ones that you think are going to be the winners? Because I think that's the most difficult part, because there's a lot of stocks out there right now who are saying, oh, we're the next Amazon. This is Amazon 2000, right?
Oh, and I'm not even doing that. That's not the game I'm playing. Like right before your Zoom, I was on a Zoom with a startup with a guy that's backed by Jimmy Iovine, and I'm sitting there talking to his pitch deck that he's telling me, and we may invest into this company, right? We had a very good meeting together on the Zoom. No, but to me, it's the winners are cheap. FANG is cheap. Facebook, Apple, Netflix, Google, Tesla, stuff that's not going away. I'm not sitting here picking the next great Facebook. Not talking about that. Look, when the market crash happened in 08, 09, Ford went to $1 for the stock. You could buy Ford at $1. Citigroup was $1. I mean, these were so cheap, it was insane. So we're not talking about picking the next Amazon or the next.
Remember when oil was zero?
Negative. Shoot, it was a negative.
Negative, yeah.
Yeah. So, we're not talking about that. All I'm saying is a lot of stuff is going to be cheap. Real estate is going to be cheaper. Even collectible cards is going to be cheaper. NFTs, cheaper. And by the way, it's very important that you're highlighting this to understand this part as well. I'm going to tell you, this is the risk I'm taking. I am taking a risk, but this is the risk I'm taking, because if nothing happens and Dow goes to 70,000, I lose a lot. You obviously understand what I'm saying. If I'm wrong, and you know how sometimes you look at the Investment Company Act of America, their mutual fund from 1934 is done 12.3%. If you would have stayed in, but if you would have taken it out on the top 10 days, the 12.7% would have become 9.2%. If you would have taken top 20 days, you would have been only at 7%. So it's better to leave in the market and never take it out. Okay, sure. I can see that argument. All I'm saying is I am taking a risk, but my risk is a different kind of a risk right now. Okay. And based on the markers that I'm banking on, I think a lot of things are going to be on sale the next 12 to 24 months. And then when we do part 2 again, Tom, 2 years from now, I'm going to say, hey, Tom, man, I got to tell you, I was wrong. Or, Tom, it kind of worked out good, Tom. Or
I was about to invite you in a month. You give me 2 years.
But what I'm saying is, or I may say, Tom, we're still going through it because we don't know how long this thing's going to last.
I think you hit the nail on the head. So there's this statistic running around from Bank of America. They analyze all the stock market pullbacks, every single bear market. By definition, a bear market is at 20% and lower over the past 100 years. and if they quantified how long on average a bear market lasts. And the average is, as you mentioned this intuitively before, but it's 10 months. So if we go back to December, the Santa rally, so we're pretty much right now at the 6-month mark, another 4 months of pain based on the statistic alone. What people are not understanding, I think people are misunderstanding the statistic, and this is what you just said right now, is the end of the bear market is not the beginning of the bull market. It's two separate things. You can end the bear market and be in shit territory for another couple of years. Look at 2000. It's been years until you started climbing back up. So I wouldn't. It's really important to understand these nuances. But I mean, I wanted to share with you like my methodology, how I DCA, and compare it to yours. So I heard you mention on your podcast Palantir, which I'm a huge fan of. Everybody knows. So the way I look at it and why I'm so bullish, like on Palantir, for example, is I say, okay, what do I want to DCA into right now? Well, first of all, I'm a money guy. I'm a financial guy. So I look at I don't want to see any debt on the books. I want to see plenty of cash. I want to see sustainable cash flow, positive free cash flow, high percentage. I want to see good TAM. I want to see nice growth, pricing power. I want to see everything that basically makes it a non-discretionary product. Basically, everything that this kind of detaches me from being dependent on the shittiness of this market. I want to see lack of dependence on oil prices, on commodities, on stuff that basically are going to go through the roof right now. And like for me, like Palantir checks all these boxes. But right, I know you got to go soon. And shout out to the 2,500 people that showed up for this. What's kind of your methodology of sifting through all this garbage right now? Because there's only like about 2%, 3% of these companies going to make it out alive of those. Like, how do you analyze your winners right now? How do you pick them?
Yeah, I mean, Palantir, they're not going away anytime soon. You know what they're built on many different measurable sides. It's one of the most feared companies, but it's also one of the most sexy companies that people want to get into, right? Even though their stock right now is on sale, and I think the sale may continue, but it is what it is.
Oh yeah, it's dropping more, much more.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. But then there's some the other day I had a call with the CEO and founder of this company where they can take my voice with the way I enunciate and the way my tone is, the way I speak, and for $7,500 a language, they can get my voice, the way it sounds, the way I talk, my pacing in 24 different languages. What is that worth? That's insane. And they're showing it to me. Here's how you would sound in Russian. Хорошо, не знаю, right? Иди сюда. Okay, wow. But I'm not saying it. The machine is saying it. Here's how I sound in Portuguese. Here's what I sound like in Mandarin. Okay, I'm interested in that technology. I had this other guy on the podcast who started this company called Clearview AI, which I don't know if you've heard of Clearview AI. And what they do is they're the Google for faces. So they've been sued by, I think, 40 different countries. They've been sued. So they go to Ukraine and they offer the technology to Zelensky and these Russian soldiers that were coming over, and then they change their clothes and they're saying, I'm from Ukraine. And he takes the phone, takes a picture of their face. It's like, no, this is a Russian soldier, because it goes back to him being that's a ridiculous technology, right? Those are some of the smaller things that I'm interested in that are going to be risky. But then look, small cap, mid cap, large cap, there's going to be so many large cap companies that are going to be on sale that you don't need to go look at the small cap to have to make your money. I'm plenty happy with investing in the mid cap and the large cap stuff to know that I can make the money there. There's certain people that are playing a different game. That's the game I'm playing.
So you're not so much focused on like a financial fundamentals analysis, more on let me find the next disruptive cycle. Let me find the next thing that's going to change everything. Like
No,
big tech.
What I'm saying is, I'm saying to you, it's obviously a portion of your money. There's a portion of my money that I'm just throwing at whatever, like 100x. This thing, I put 750 in here. This could be a $5 billion company. My 750 at a $7.5 million valuation could end up being shit, whatever. It's $750 million. I'm all in with that part, right? But I'm also playing the single, double, triple game. I'm not going for grand slams and all that stuff. I'll go for home runs as well. But I don't think you have to, because the average person, maybe they're watching, they're like, Tom, I don't have the level of intellectual, the level of experience you have. You're from the industry. I'm not. So I don't see the numbers that you see. You're saying all these acronyms. I don't recognize them. The average person can't look at a balance sheet and say, this is what their OPEX is looking like. This is what this is looking like. You could do that, right? The average person trying to play a game that they're not an expert in, I don't recommend that, because they're going to burn themselves. They're going to lose. Either go find somebody that's got a history of doing a good job managing, give your money to them and ride that part. Or sometimes you can watch what other people are doing. You can actually see there's guys on TikTok that follow what Nancy Pelosi's husband buys. Like literally.
I saw that.
Yeah. So there's many ways of going.
She's the best trader in history.
It's the
best trader in history. Yeah. She's better than Citadel, better than everybody. It's just amazing results.
There's a lot of ways to doing this, but just listen, in the next 2, 5, 10 years, we're going to see who did it best. And I think some of us are going to get some things right. I think some of us are going to get some things wrong. But I think the majority is going to miss this mark, unfortunately.
Well, most often people like talk the talk. Oh, when it dips, I'm going to buy, and then they get, you need a lot of balls for this. And I think that before I let you go, Pat, one last question I want to ask you, and this is I don't pre-write my interviews, but this is the one question I had because I really want to ask you this. Don't think I ever heard anybody ask you this. If I talk to you, you mentioned 2 or 3 years. Let's say we talk in 10 years. I'm 41 years old. You're 43 years old, right? We're pretty much same age, 3 kids, same ages. So I know what my life in 10 years I want to be what it looks like. If in your utopia in 10 years, where you at, what you're doing, what's going on, tell me.
Enough access to do whatever I want to do in the media world, and a media conglomerate that's influential in Hollywood, in news, in sports, in podcasts, in documentaries, on OTT, and technology, where most households are using or aware of. So for me, to do what I want to do in my life, I need access to a lot of capital. And in 10 years, the plan is to have that kind of capital where we can call some major shots, because the vision of what I'm trying to do in my life is a pretty big one. If God keeps me healthy and things stay solid, we're going to be playing ball for a very long time to come. But in 10 years, 53 years old, I'm hoping that guy, I'm not hoping, I know that guy's going to be a wiser guy, but I'm working my ass off right now so the 53-year-old PBD can make the right choices with the money we make and the partnership we make to take it even to greater heights. So that's my job for the next 10 years, to make the 53-year-old proud.
Somebody's asking your plans for Iran. Even Patrick can't help Iran at this point. Don't even bring it up.
Even Patrick can't.
No, it's GG. Yeah, man. Yeah. I think we alienated and aggravated a lot of people with politics today. Let's stay away from Iran. Yeah. Hey, Pat, thanks for joining us today. I'd appreciate to have you back on, not in 2 or 3 years, actually, as soon as you can go back and give us a little bit of an update. This has been a blast. Thank you for the 2,448 people in the chat right now with us today. Thank you for everybody in the comments. And so I get some popcorn. It's a bumpy ride right now. Woo. See what happens.
Thanks, appreciate you.
Somebody says TOMNASH for president. I can't. Physically, I wasn't born in the US. Okay. Later, boys and girls.